201 million years ago, Earth was a single supercontinent, Pangea. It was a brutal kingdom, ruled not by dinosaurs, but by bizarre armor-plated crocodiles. But then, an ancient seam in the planet's crust began to unzip. A flood of lava would poison the sky, suffocating 80% of all species. Yet, from the ashes, a small, quick-footed survivor would rise and launch a dynasty that would last 150 million years. This is the world of the late Triassic. It is a world that looks utterly alien to our own. The supercontinent Pangea stretched from pole to pole. Its interior was a vast, arid desert. And it was dominated by a group of reptiles we call the crurotarsans. These were the dominant branch of the Archosaur family tree, the line that leads to modern crocodiles. Breath. But these were not crocodiles. Not as we know them. They had diversified into a spectacular array of forms. Armored, tank-like herbivores called etosaurs, and terrifying apex predators, the Rauisuchians. Imagine a creature like Postosuchus, 10 feet tall, with a skull full of steak knife teeth. This was the T-Rex of its day, and it was a walking crocodile. These crurotarsans were the undisputed rulers of Pangea, filling every major ecological niche. Breath. So, where were the dinosaurs? They were there. But they were small, bipedal, but insignificant. Creatures like Coelophysis were fast-moving pests, living in the shadows of these crocodilian titans. They were surviving, not thriving. In this brutal world, there was no clear path for dinosaurs to ever take over. But this entire global ecosystem was balanced on a knife's edge. Pangea was not built to last. But the stability of Pangea was an illusion, masking a catastrophic weakness deep within the planet. The immense gravitational forces of the Earth and Moon were pulling on the supercontinent. It was stretching, thinning, and in its center, a plume of superheated magma from the mantle was rising. It pressed against the crust like a colossal blister. A weak seam right between modern-day North America South America, and Africa. This was the birth of the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, or CAMP. This breath. And 201 million years ago, it erupted. The crust tore open. Not from a single volcano. This was a fissure, thousands of kilometers long. It unzipped the continent, vomiting an ocean of fire. This is one of the largest flood basalt eruptions in Earth's history. We're talking about millions of cubic kilometers of lava. Enough to cover the entire United States in a blanket of rock hundreds of meters deep. The eruption was so violent, it physically tore Pangea apart, birthing the Atlantic Ocean. Breath. For the life on the surface, the lava was the least of their problems. The real killer was invisible. As the magma burned through the crust, it released trillions of tons of carbon dioxide. Sulfur dioxide. Methane. In a geological instant, the chemistry of the entire planet was rewritten. Breath. The world burned. The sulfur dioxide mixed with water in the atmosphere. It created a devastating global acid rain. Plants, the foundation of the food web, were scorched from the earth. The planet was effectively sterilized. Then came the heat. All that carbon dioxide triggered runaway global warming. A suffocating planet-wide hothouse that raised global temperatures by degrees. The arid deserts of Pangea became uninhabitable furnaces. The great crocodilian rulers, the Rauisuchians, the Dinosaurs, had nowhere to run. Their size, their dominance, their specialization, it all became a liability. But the apocalypse on land was matched by a silent catastrophe in the seas. The CO2 dissolved into the water, creating carbonic acid. The oceans became acidic, a toxic bath. It dissolved the shells of plankton, ammonites, and coral reefs. The entire marine food web collapsed from the bottom up. It was a perfect storm. A 1-2 punch of fire and acid.
The Triassic-Jurassic
a crisis that
Extinction
attacked
event.
every ecosystem at once. On land and in the sea. Scientists call this the Triassic-Jurassic Extinction event. When the toxic skies finally cleared, up to 80% of all species on Earth were gone. Breath. The world fell silent. To breath. Breath. For hundreds of thousands of years, the world was a poisoned, empty furnace. The skies were choked with a toxic haze. The oceans were acidic and stagnant. The great rulers of Pangea were gone. The giant Rauisuchians and the armored Dinosaurs vanished from the fossil record. They were victims of their own specialization, unable to cope with a food web that had collapsed from the bottom up. Their large bodies required too much food. Their metabolisms couldn't handle the poisoned air. The throne of the world was now empty. But in the deepest, most desperate corners of this wasteland, life clung on. Breath. A new hero appears. Not a titan. But a small, fast-moving survivor. The dinosaurs, which had lived for millions of years in the shadows. Why did they survive when their competitors were annihilated? They weren't stronger. They weren't, at the time, more intelligent. They survived because they possessed a hidden biological toolkit, an adaptation for a crisis they never saw coming. The answer was in their breath. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction was, at its heart, a respiratory crisis. The massive volcanic eruptions had flooded the atmosphere with carbon dioxide. This toxic blanket didn't just heat the planet. Scientists believe it triggered a series of anoxic events, periods where oxygen levels in the atmosphere plummeted. The great crurotarsans, with their simple bellows-like lungs, couldn't cope. They effectively suffocated on a global scale. Breath. But dinosaurs were different. They were on the evolutionary line that would one day lead to birds. And they had inherited the blueprints for a revolutionary piece of biological hardware. The avian respiratory system. unlike our own inefficient in and out lungs. Dinosaurs possessed a network of air sacs that pushed air in a single, constant direction. It's a one-way loop. This flow-through system is hyper-efficient, wringing every last molecule of oxygen from the air. In a normal, oxygen-rich world, this was a minor advantage. But in the low-oxygen crucible of the extinction, it was the ultimate key to survival. While their competitors were gasping, the small dinosaurs were still able to run. To hunt. And to reproduce. Their superior lungs, combined with their small size and faster metabolisms, allowed them to endure the apocalypse. Breath. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction was a global filter. It wasn't random. It selected for a very specific trait. That trait was respiratory efficiency, and the dinosaurs were the only large land animals that had it. As the planet slowly healed, as the carbon dioxide was reabsorbed and the ferns began to return, the survivors stepped out into a silent, empty world. All the top predator and large herbivore niches were now vacant. This weren't just survival. It was the single greatest ecological opportunity in Earth's history.
For millions of years, these titans dominated the jungle.
The age of dinosaurs began.
Undeniable with every thunderous footfall.
The small bipedal dinosaurs of the Triassic. Now had a planet to themselves. And they exploded in diversity. This event is what scientists call an adaptive radiation. With no competition, evolution was finally unleashed. They rapidly diversified into new forms. Some stayed small, refining their bird-like traits. But others began to grow. And grow. The descendants of those small, fast-moving survivors would become the largest animals to ever walk the earth. The long-necked sauropods. The armored stegosaurs. And the great theropod hunters. Their superior, bird-like lungs didn't just let them survive the apocalypse. Scientists believe this powerful respiratory engine is precisely what allowed them to achieve such colossal sizes. The 150 million year reign of the dinosaurs. Was not an accident. It was earned, forged in the fires of Pangea's violent split, and secured by a hidden biological advantage. The Great Extinction event didn't just end a world. It cleared the stage, proving that in life's grand story, the greatest catastrophes are also the moments of greatest opportunity. Breath. If you would like to join us on our next expedition into Earth's darkest hours, in search of the light of life, consider joining our Researchers Guild by subscribing to the channel. And let us know in the comments. Before this, had you ever heard of the Triassic-Jurassic extinction? Or did you believe the asteroid was the only one that mattered?